Fire drills do not scale. Shiny objects don't scale. If they weren't aligned with your goals, why are we doing them? Don't take the big money that's just once. There's a difference between intellectual buy-in, like intellectually they think that's a cool idea, and budget buy-in that they will pay for that solution. Your relationships are a bank, and you make deposits and you take withdrawals. And if you haven't made any deposits and you're trying to withdraw, you're withdrawing on blood.
Welcome to another episode of AI-Led Growth Podcast. My next guest, Anna Baird, is literally a badass. I don't know how to describe her any other way. She started as a KPMG partner, helped Google go public and a bunch of other companies, then decided to go into startups and became a CFO, turned COO, turned CRO, turned board member, turned venture partner. And we are here at GrowthX lucky to get to interact with her and learn from her. So I said, why don't we just sit down and go through your journey, what kind of advice you give to founders trying to grow their company and going through the different phases. And at the end of this conversation, I really thought I just went through a mini MBA, a masterclass of how to become a world-class operator. So I hope you enjoy. I feel like you've had this really amazing journey as an operator and in so many really critical functions of a business being successful. So maybe we can start with just telling everybody a little bit about like that journey, even from the beginning, and a little bit of like, not just the highlight reels, maybe. Tell us a little bit of like the let's say the bookmarks of your chapters.
So I'm going to go way back because it's hitting right now. So Jane Goodall just passed away. And I was a huge fan of her. So I read her first book when I was in high school, and it's what made me become a zoology major in college. So I started college as a zoology major. Yeah. And I wanted to go, I didn't want to go do apes in Africa. I wanted to do tigers in China. And I was going to have this amazing...
Change our filtering LinkedIn. We need to look for that major for now.
And then I did my first zoo course, and we dissected everything and its mother, literally.
Oh my God.
And then we went to spring break, and all the stuff you dissected stayed there, and you came back, and then you went and dissected it some more, and it was like, okay. And I decided, okay, this probably, and then I found out you had to live on grants, and I was like, okay, maybe this isn't for me. My TA,
The optional.
well, no, my zoo TA for these labs that we did, he was going to Southeast Asia to these beaches, and he was going after these worms that live in the sand, and they're like 6 feet long. They're the most horrific things you've ever seen in your life. And I'm like, why? He was getting his doctorate. I was like, why? Or is this? He goes, because it's what I could get a grant for him. That is the moment. That's the first bookmark that said, okay, this is not the career for me. Because if I have to go do that, because that's all that there's grants for, I will not be a happy camper. I still have a passion for animals and travel and all of that. So I kept that piece, but I switched first to marketing, and then so I took an accounting class, and I switched to accounting, and I was really good at it. It was just like finding puzzles. It was just like people either hated it or loved it. It was one of those weird things, right? And I really loved it. And so then I took another class, and then I joined Vadolf Psi, and then I got recruited by all the top accounting firms to go work for them. So I worked for KPMG in San Jose is what I chose. And I loved it. Was doing IPOs, working until 2 a.m.,
Wow.
taking the CPA exam, doing all the craziness, and everybody was your age. So it was like,
Accounting sounds like the most exciting creative career in the planet. I love that. You should be the poster.
So it's not as much fun, I don't think, anymore, because they're not in person as much. But you're never in the office. You're always at different sites, right? And meeting with people and learning about their business. And to the point we were talking about a while ago, the thing I learned early, which I think has served me so well, is, so I'm auditing, right? I was an auditor, and you're just looking at their financials from what happened last year or last quarter.
Yeah.
But I would go and I'd sit with their sales team, and I'd sit with their product team, so I could understand the product and the pain they solved and how they sold. And if I knew those things, the financials made more sense to me. And so I always...
Did everybody do that?
No. And I think it is the thing
What made you think of doing that, honestly, or what got you to start?
Because I love that more than the accounting stuff.
That makes sense.
Way more fun, but it also made the business make sense to me. I was like, you can't look at something in a silo and understand.
Like the numbers are not just numbers.
Yeah, I was looking at, like, I did revenue. I was always like, okay, I had dealt big contracts with all their big customers. Like, what was going on and why? Why were they buying? What was success, right? How did we get renewals? All those things. And so I loved it. I loved the job. And then I switched from the auditing side to the consulting side at 9 years. I made partner in 10. I was a global lead partner on Google. I helped them with their IPO. I was with them for the next 7 years. I've been in Oracle's boardroom, Google's boardroom, Adobe's boardroom, you name it. Intuit was one of my accounts as well. I was a global lead partner on Google and Intuit. So it was just this crazy. I got to see Silicon Valley like at its prime, like, and it was just like
What?
things were just exploding.
Yeah.
And I still remember walking through Google and seeing the engineers at night working on the robots to turn the pages to scan all the books in libraries. Remember when they were doing that whole, I mean, it was like the beginning of this new, technology revolution.
There's something about, I think, that time, let's just store the whole information in the world. As I think about these companies being started and the app layers and things like that, and now we have tools that are actually possible to do that. Feels like people are narrowing down on the narrowest possible like problem, you know? Maybe you need that for focus to start, but then like they stay there a little bit and they're like, oh, what's the next product I need to sell to make money or to raise money? And then like Google didn't have that,
Um,
like I would love to just hear like as if I was like, I wish I was a fly in the room and
Yeah.
those times,
Well, I
you know?
still
But
remember Google just saying to their engineers, 20% of your time is free, right? To do whatever you want. And a lot of innovation came from that. I mean, this was like their major hackathon. It was every day, right? They were doing this hackathon. And companies as they grow change. Google has changed. They aren't that same company anymore. Actually, I think I actually see the breadth of how people are thinking about bringing the world together and creating that next level of innovation, both for humans, but also for technology. You look at Jensen and NVIDIA and like the things that he is talking about doing globally, right? Like, what is this that changes the world at this next level? I was just listening to a podcast with him, and I think there are people, and that was the Google founders. That was Sergey and Larry, right? They were just like, I want to do something cool and innovative. I want the freedom. I want that innovative culture. There are still founders and leaders who are doing that. And I think you start to see now. So you think about AI, and there's all these cancer research centers. There's Fred Hutch in Seattle, and there's, all over the US, there's these major cancer research centers, but they all just work in a bubble. They like they have their patients, whoever gets to them gets these great doctors, and they work through whatever, their symptoms are and whatever type of cancer that they have and experimental treatments, and they do their whole thing. And so now there's a partnership with, I think actually NVIDIA is part of this. I know Microsoft is.
yeah.
They're bringing AI to connect all those databases for free across all of those cancer research centers so that all cancer patients and those doctors will have access to every piece of data across all of the work that those centers are doing. That is game changing. And I love that people are saying, how do I use technology to now make humankind better? And that's what we should always be doing, I think, especially in AI. If we can think about that piece of it, and that is our focus of how we make this world better, then all kinds of amazing things will happen. The bad side of that is also true. I'm going to focus on this side for a second.
Yeah,
Focus your question, but I think it's people like that who are like, how do I take this and broaden it? How do I create this dynamic because of the technology that we're going to partner together? And you see, NVIDIA partnering with Intel and partnering with OpenAI, and they're all like trying to create this ecosystem. I think great things could come out of that as long as they keep the right focus, that we're doing this for the right reasons and not just for greed and money.
For me, as I was born and raised in Brazil and immigrant coming to America. I was here, moved here when I was 11, didn't speak a word of English, and I grew up in Houston. And it wasn't until I moved to the Bay Area and started get exposed to this, I didn't even know what was possible. To me, what was possible was I can go to college and I'll be lucky to get a desk job if I work really hard and do really well. And I will build some things on the side for fun because that's what I enjoy doing. And then over time, I'm like, man, I remember Google recruiting out of my business school, and I'm like, oh shit, I could have, like, and it's not a regret, but then I came out here, and then I was working for HP out in San Jose, and you got exposed to that because the Google office was like right there too. Then like slowly, I started getting exposed to founders and startups and then I was at HashiCorp. We went from 6 to 100 in like 2 years. And I was like, wow, like this is possible, right? And then when I was at Scale and other places and I started seeing like, interact with like billionaires or people that are like, really successful. Don't get me wrong. There's some that are like, holy crap, you're crazy smart. And then others are like, you're normal. Uh, you just have like no
People don't
fear. You
conjure,
just are
yeah.
completely oblivious to risk. Like,
That's the difference. That's the difference. No, sorry. This not being oblivious to it, but not being afraid of it.
yeah, yeah.
So
Oblivious maybe is the
it
wrong word, but
comes, no, but it comes
there was
from a
some of that though
place.
too.
No, it comes from a place. And I think you say, I'm going to go back to Jensen and NVIDIA. I mean, he came here, his parents sent him here, they had no money, right? He was working bussing tables and doing dishes.
Yeah.
And now look at where he is. I used to look for this in my sales teams. I'd say I want three traits that they have: intellectual curiosity, so they can empathize with their customer and are dying to understand their business so they can help empathize even better, and a desire to win. And that desire comes from usually one of primarily three places. They overcame hardship from where they grew up and how they grew up. That is also me. So I'll tell you that in a second. I was the first person in my family to go to college. And I went to 4 high schools in 4 years. I had a 4.5 GPA, and I ended up going to Fresno State because I didn't know where to
What
go
was
and what you
possible?
would do. No, I didn't know
Yeah.
what was possible. I didn't know what was possible.
Wow.
But I think so. You overcame hardship. You were competitive, and that can be competitive debate, competitive sports,
Yeah.
competitive whatever, and you're in a big family, because big families, you
That's
have
my
to
life.
fight to get
9 siblings.
attention.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to fight to get space, attention, all these things.
Eat.
Yeah, and you're willing to take risks to get ahead. So that comes from all three of those have that one trait. You're willing to take risks to get ahead because you want to win. And winning can be financial security. Winning can be, I just said I win.
Yeah, yeah.
Lots of ways that winning means to people individually. But the difference for everyone I see who is successful came from that is they're willing to take on things. And you were talking about my career. It's like, what did I do? Why were there these weird bookmarks? Why was I a partner at KPMG and then a CFO and then a COO and then a CRO and now a board member and a venture partner? It's because it's like, I'll go take that on. It's broken. Let's do it.
I think I would love to double click on that, but I'll add one more thing where I grew up in China and Canada, and I moved here 8 years ago. And I think the thing that the Bay Area has is optimism. I think people here are just more positive about whatever they're building and what impact it'll have on everything else.
Thank you, because we get bad mouths so much. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
that
Whether it's true or not, I think everyone here builds with like good intention, which I think is
I think that is most, you see, there's so much passion that comes out of, and that's the thing I love about founders is I think there is a passion to fix something that you saw as a pain, right? Wherever that is that you came from, whatever that is, that piece of passion might be. And you're like, I can see ways to a path forward that makes it better. And I can see ways to be innovative around this. And I can see ways to take that workflow and turn it into something different. And I think that is a foundation of this, is that passion to change something for the better,
Yeah.
which I think is where that optimism comes from. When you're building something for that, it's super exciting. It makes it fun. You're like, I am making people's lives better. Whatever that piece of technology does, you are making people's lives better.
the culture is super hard to replicate.
It is.
But I think one thing I wanted to talk about was, when I look at you, Anna, like I see so many cool things that parallel kind of my journey. I used to be an accountant. I have
Love that.
switched to so many different things, from product to being a founder, and now working with Marcel and leading marketing. I wanted to ask, out of all the switches you did from CFO to COO, from COO to CRO, which one was the hardest?
It's funny. Can I have two? Okay.
Both of those switches are relatively.
It was actually was coming out of public accounting to be a CFO. I never operated a company. I came out of college and I worked at KPMG, and I worked at a ton of different companies, right? And I helped them do a lot of things, and I gave a lot of advice. And I knew a lot from seeing a lot of different companies. That is the benefit of that profession, right? And it was super fun. But I didn't know how to operate.
Which company was
So I left KPMG and I went to McAfee. That one wasn't as hard as the move from McAfee to be the first CFO. So I was CFO of Say Media that was here in San Francisco. That was my first C-level role, but like at a small company, like operating, like how do you go kind of thing. And they were like 86 million, I think, at the time. And I walked in there and I screwed up a couple things really bad. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. It was one of those moments you're like, oh, holy cow. And so I had to take a step back and go, okay, I need to sit here with a big, big learning mindset, right? Like I need to not think think I know nothing, not think I know a lot. Because I was always like, okay, it's the imposter syndrome. Like, I'm gonna walk.
You are
in
used to
here.
also being like, showing value, right?
I was a
Having to
smart person
demonstrate
in the
value.
room.
We're paying you.
I went from being a smart person in the room to being a really stupid person in the room. I had to learn the difference between bookings versus revenue, because we didn't look at bookings from when you're an auditor, you just look at revenue. So I was like, oh, those are different. Holy cow. Okay. Silicon Valley Bank will take all your money if you trigger debt covenants. It's like, what is it? What did I just do? So it was insane. And I learned that, not everybody tells you the truth. Like, you're, as an auditor, people tell you the truth because you're coming in to like, they should. Anyway, not all do, but they should. But I learned, you can be a C-level executive and your founders cannot tell you the truth about what's happening in the business. And that I learned the hard way for my first two startups.
Yeah.
So that was learning not only how do I think about operations and collaborating with marketing and product and all these different teams, and being a part of a team every single day. Because when you're in consulting, you leave, right? And it was great. There's some cultures I hate. I was like, great, I'm going to be gone in 3 weeks. It won't make a difference, but you're there every day. You have to live there. So that culturally and from my own skill set was a hard transition. And then I think we were talking about this earlier. I loved being a COO. Really liked being a CFO, but I kept taking on CFO plus operations, CFO plus supply chain, CFO plus. And then I became a COO and I really enjoyed it. But when I got asked to take on the CRO role, and we were talking about COVID hit, like literally 6 months after I took over the role. So talk about the most impacted team, when you're not out selling, when you have SDRs that are living with 5 people and now trying to take calls from, a closet. I mean, it was the mental health of the team aspect that I had to lean into, which we never talked about mental health at work when I was coming up. You didn't talk politics. You didn't talk about mental health. We were talking about all those things. Such a big shift to make sure I could keep my understanding where my team was and how could I help them from a mental health perspective. How did I help our customers who were struggling? Literally, it was the first time in my life I had marketing do a digital bereavement card because we have people passing away from COVID who were at our companies, and we needed to say something to how do we drive this business that, we have to make successful. So the job went from run go to market to I run mental health and customer health and all of these things in such a different way than we had ever done historically. Those are the two hardest pivots.
Wow, that's incredible. And as you went from all these high level and really hard to get right executive operator, like by the time you got to this like third kind of change evolution, however you want to call it, right? Like I would assume you already had like either an operating model of how you approach things or a mental model or just a way of like, okay, I learned my lessons, I messed up some things, like I come in, this is how I approach it. Like what shaped your mental models and the way you approach your work in your day to day?
It's funny. I have to give KPMG credit. And Jason, you and I could talk about the things we learned there, but I was a friend.
That's the filter of LinkedIn stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Check. I'm just adding filters of like, because I need to hire amazing accounts who are doing something totally. What are the LinkedIn filters I need to add?
It was when we were talking about earlier with me going and sitting with sales and product at my customers or clients when I was at KPMG. The thing that I loved and that I was really good at or became really good at was listening. And I would just sit in, because I didn't know anything about product or sales at the time. And I would just listen to what was going on in the business and so they liked to talk to me because I would listen. And it made me very successful because I listened and I knew things. Yeah, there you always are. Yeah, 100%. That core skill throughout the life will be therapy. If you could be a therapist for people, you will win. But I became really successful at KPMG because I was listening and I understood about things about these clients and I could put things together and they liked working with me. So, I would get the renewal. I got requested back, right? And so listening, I think, was probably that first foundational skill. And then over time, I think the things that I learned is you don't just listen to your own team. I would really make sure I put into my time on my calendar. I'd go sit with new people in product. I'd go sit with our brand new employees. This is when I was a CRO, even. I would go sit with people in HR. I'd go sit with people in our engineering team just to hear and understand. Because again, You have empathy with your customers and the pain they have, and how do we solve it with our product. You also have empathy with the teams that are within your own company and what they're trying to solve and what's on their plate. And so how do you work together to get to the right answer and to prioritize? You need to have a little more empathy with what's going on in their lives, because we all make a lot of assumptions that are true, especially if you're not in the same room all the time.
I took a bunch of notes the first time I had that Zoom call. Was it like 2, 3 months ago now?
Yeah, it was a while.
And one of the things I wrote down was that you said was kill silos. So it sounds like you do that because you talk to, all the people on the team. How do you like build a team that attempts to do that? Because I think it seemed like that was something you did as well.
You know, what's funny, even when I was a CFO, because accountants don't want to go talk to anybody typically. There's that personality, not all, but a chunk. Like, I want to go sit down with my numbers. I want to go. You need those people because you want them to go like really focus, go find the
I
puzzle.
just keep thinking of The Accountant, but the movie, but
Not that one. No, this was way more fun. Sort of. But it's so I literally would say, who have you had coffee with that's not on our team this week? I would tell my teams. I would say, like, I want you to go, because if you're doing the budgets for product, you need to go sit and talk to the product team about what are they dealing with? What's wrong? What's going wrong? What's going right? And how do we work through that together? And the thing that I told them was like, look, if you build a relationship with these people, you go have a coffee, you just learn about them, they learn about you. There's no agenda. So we're just going to get to know each other. If they have questions about what you do, you have questions about what they do, just have some intellectual curiosity. There's no like, oh my gosh, you have to learn this. So just go build a relationship, because then when we come and you have an ask or you have to say no,
exactly, you have the base.
you have a base of, I always just say, I tell my kids this too, your relationships are a bank. And you make deposits and you take withdrawals. And if you haven't made any deposits and you're trying to withdraw, you're withdrawing on blood. There's nothing in there.
That is literally almost word for word how my dad would talk about this overall in life.
I like that.
And for me, when I started IBM, I was a co-op. I was working 2 jobs, that plus freelancing graphic design, while doing 17-hour semesters in school, trying to graduate early. And then IBM, for whatever reason at the time, even though I was in Austin, was mostly remote first. And so imagine you're like, I don't know, I was like 19, 20 in college, but then being in a professional environment where it's mostly remote, and as an organization of 200,000 people. And so on one side, like, I was at IBM for almost 4 or 5 years at the beginning of my career. By the time I was like drained from not having human interactions, because fresh out of college, I didn't make friends through work. That's hard. But then on the other hand, I just learned that I just had to go outbound to people internally and meet them and ask for a meeting and and build the relationship, build my personal brand, and like I had to navigate. But I almost had this like, I felt like a safe playground to navigate. I could go hit up a VP anywhere in the entire organization, or a triple PhD or whatever, and ask questions and ask the dumb questions, and I wouldn't get fired. I can't just hit up that outside. And then one thing I noticed in the last several years, but in folks that are earlier in their career, it's almost like it doesn't come naturally. They started a company, and I'm like, oh, did you meet so and so and so and so? And they're like, no, was I supposed to? And I was like, okay, so you build no relationships with anyone, and you've been here 3 months, and you've not had a single conversation that somebody didn't tell you to have.
Yeah.
And I remember when I joined Service Titan, I think within the first 30 days, I had about, I don't know, like 100 meetings between customers, going to an on-site onboarding, to like every single person, like just doing these like 30 minutes to an hour, introducing myself. Hey, tell me about your job. What do you do? What are your pains? And, I don't know why that's not like, like there's some of that.
Onboarding is an art that I think we have lost a little bit especially through COVID. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I think you think about this as an executive, as a board member, I do this still too. There's an onboarding program sometimes, not always, but sometimes. And that is, okay, here's all the people you should meet. Here's the head of marketing. Here's the head of product. Here's the head of engineering. Here's the head of HR. Like, here's all the people you should meet to get some time with. And then you look at the layer below them. You're like, okay, let me go set meetings with those people. And we don't do that for everybody. We don't even think about it for a lot of other people coming on board. It's like, well, who else should they know? Who are the other people that are going to be impactful? Or who is at their level that's in another department that would be just great for them to know? We really should, because I think when you don't teach people how to do that to the point you're just making, they don't know, and you just get heads down on the job you've been given, and you go like, I'm just going to go do my job. And you think about remote, you don't even like, it's so much easier just to say that, like, here, let me give you this work and you do it and then submit it back in, versus like, okay, how do we make sure there's an ecosystem of people who know each other and can rely on each other and can ask questions in a safe environment, and you're not people just in your department, right? And I think it should be a change that we make in how we think about onboarding people at companies and building relationships and building culture again. Honestly, I think there's just we have to be more intentional.
I love the word intentional too, because culture, if left by default, is garbage, and it kind of decays to the lowest common denominator. And it takes every ounce of energy and intention to shape it to what you want. The culture of a company is pretty much a reflection mostly of the founders, and then the first people that join, and then the people that they bring, but mostly the founders. And it ends up becoming, like, unless with intention, also a reflection of all their weaknesses and flaws and toxic behavior and, like, trauma and all of that, like and and maybe it's too drastic, but it is true. Like, I could tell, like, all the companies I work for, I can tell all the bad parts about the culture. I could tell you exactly the trait in one of the founders that reflects.
Well, look at the change in Microsoft to Satya.
Yeah.
From what it was,
Incredible.
it was insane. And what he was able to do with an organization that was that size is really incredible. Satya is an amazing person and leader, and Microsoft has its faults, but you have to give him just credit on so many fronts. But I think that you're right. I mean, it was a reflection of the faults of a leader, right? Some of those things, people talk about toxicity at work. Radical candor is great, but not when you're screaming it, right? It's like, and how do you use people that you hire to be culture bearers as you continue to grow as a founder? Because that's the other thing. I think people don't let go and let the leaders that they brought in help now to create that next level of culture that the company will, because the culture changes. It changes with every single person you hire.
So, love to dig in on that, because how do you let go and let people maybe build leverage in their functions and build their functions? And then when is the time to up level?
Mm. You have to start with trust. As a founder, I think the thing that I see the most with founders is letting go and not seeing everything. So they start to freak out a little bit when they can't see everything anymore because the company's gotten too big. And then you start to micromanage so you can try to see something. And that is, that's the wrong path. That is, you hired
From extremes.
Yeah, we do. You go from, I'm like, okay, I'm running everything to I'm not running anything. So now I'm going to go, drive this one person crazy because
Skip 5 levels.
I need to see something. Yeah.
A funny aside, I remember getting a text message from one of the CEOs of a company I work for, and I was about 4 levels below that CEO, and it was on a Friday night, and he's like, why did the quality score of this page on this paid search campaign drop from a 9 to a 7? What are you doing about it? And I was having dinner with my wife, and I was traveling all the time to SoCal for that job, and I remember just freaking out, and it ruined my whole night. And I just remember getting those types of text messages from the
They
CEO.
happen from
And
CEOs all the time.
it was a text message, and it copied the CMO, the CRO, and like my entire team on the message too. So it was like not just me; it was my entire team and on a text message. I was like, that is insane.
No. Well, and talk about both creating stress. So you're not going to think clearly because you just create this huge moment of stress, and publicly. And are you going to get the best outcome from that versus, and I've seen my own CEOs do that. I've seen every CEO I work with do that. It's this big coaching moment to go, okay, something scared you. You saw something, you're trying to understand, right? You used to be able to see everything and now you don't. So how do you get insights? How do you understand? Well, that's where we start to put in process. That's where what systems of rhythm of everybody talks about rhythm of the business and cadence of KPIs and what are we showing you to make you a great CEO? You hired these people, and so you have to start with the foundation of trust. Yeah. You're going to trust but verify, right? So you have to let those functions go. And I always say, you give people enough rope and they'll either do great things or you'll find out pretty quickly that they can't. And so give them the rope, because you hired them because they had a skill set and because you were looking for this background experience, whatever it was. You hired them for a reason. Now you have to give them the trust at first, and then they have to earn it. You give it to them when they first start, and you give them some rope, and then they're going to earn it. And then you can know that you let go. But what is it, the accountability they have to you as a founder to give back the information that is critical to understand how their business is running? And so that's when you start to agree on, here's the critical pieces of what we need to understand about our business. Say, are we successful? So you have to start to create goals and say, what are the strategies that they're going to execute on to achieve our goals? And then how do we measure those? And it's not measured at the end of a quarter. It's not measured at the end of the year. It is ongoing measurement every month. How are we getting together and watching progress? Some of that might be weekly. A lot of it can be biweekly, monthly. So you don't meeting people to death. But what are the KPIs that we're going to look at monthly? What do we look at quarterly? What do we look at annually? And what are the milestones and strategic initiatives that we're surfacing for the whole team to understand? And part of this is like, we're all going to take on risks together and decide not to do things. But as long as we all know that, that's okay. That's a known, visible risk. And the whole team's going, yep, we got parked over here for a second because we don't have the time, resources, whatever. We can't solve it today. It's on the roadmap for later. Here's the thing, the 4 things that are most critical for us as a team and as a business. Here's the strategies each of us have to achieve those 4 things. And then here's the metrics that are to measure that. And if you start to put that in place as a founder, you really then give yourself a path to success, because you're not chasing shiny objects. You're not reacting to this one little thing that you saw that was wrong, because you're looking at a bigger picture and saying, yes, this one thing might have been wrong, but that doesn't mean everything's wrong. It means that one call went badly, or that one site had a problem today. It's putting things in context for a founder, a CEO, and you deserve that, right? You deserve to know what's happening in your business. But you can't do that by deep diving into everybody's business all the time. You have to create a system. Everyone's like, oh, wait, we don't want to lose innovation. This isn't about losing innovation. It's about creating foundations that scale, because fire drills do not scale. Shiny objects don't scale. If they weren't aligned with your goals, why are we doing them, right? So it keeps you focused. It keeps your resources aligned to the things that are most important and impactful to your business. And it lets you see if everybody's working in the same direction. You see really quickly if something's not going right. So you can shift as a team. You can say, well, you know what? We tried this. It's not good. Let's move. If you're doing 20 things, you have no idea what's working and what isn't.
I think HashiCorp shaped a lot of my thinking. Mitchell and Armand, the founders, are very intentional about the culture, and they always had this thing of workflows before technology. But then one of the things that was kind of instilled, and now I've carried with me the whole time, which is effective before efficient. You can't be efficient if you're not effective, because that just means you're going faster in the wrong direction.
100%.
So I always am like, okay, hold on. Don't think about moving faster, or how do you optimize this little thing? Are we confident we're heading in the right direction and in the right order? And then if we are, then yes, let's figure out ways to go faster in that direction. But I'm really curious, one thing that's really, that I have maybe more empathy for now as a founder than as a CMO, it's there's so many competing priorities, right? And people come to you with a lot of problems all the time. So there's a lot more problems than you're mentally have capacity to store. And so at some point you start to kind of you kind of can lose sight a little bit, full transparency, and it's oh man, I need to reset a little. But you work with a lot of founders. You've, been in incredible runs and companies. Is there something you would recommend or advise of when you first come in and it feels a little chaotic, or maybe it's not quite there? Is there one initial step? It's like my therapist, right? Okay, let's start with one baby step here. Is there one thing that starts to set things in the right order? Because you were describing the KPIs, the systems, trust, having visibility into milestones. I'm like, oh, that sounds beautiful. How the F do I get there? What is the first step?
So the first step, I think, is when you think about, you created this company to solve a pain, right? We were talking about this earlier, and you're solving a pain in the marketplace. Is everything your small team is doing, is everything you're doing focused on solving that pain and understanding that pain? And I think we get distracted because you'll have a customer that has a pain that's different from all the other pains that your other customers have. There's a tendency to go, yeah, we can do that. I can do that. We can make that happen. And it's that 80-20 rule, right? It's are you solving for 80% of the pain you see out there? Are you solving some shiny thing, weird system that somebody has? one-off thing that they're
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
fix. Every founder goes through this. I see it over and over and over again. And what that starts to do, it starts to drive you crazy, first of all, but it also takes your resources and you're throwing them in 20 different directions and they are not very effective, right? It's like, so can you take what you see in the marketplace and go, okay, if we only focused on these three major things first, right? And it's this roadmap, right? That's where roadmaps came from. It's like, what are the biggest three things that we could do next that impact the pain and help us as a business grow? And if you are really rallying your resources and yourself, like saying, okay, I've got to say no to things. You do have to say no to things.
Yeah.
I was so proud. One of our CEOs said no to a huge company yesterday. And I was telling him, I'm like, you can't do this, because what they wanted them to do was they're not big enough. It will take all their resources and then they won't build anything that anybody else is interested in because they're only going to get revenue from this one. So I'm going to tell you a side story. I was in an Uber coming from Seattle just this week, and this Uber driver came from Tanzania. And so I'm super curious. I'm like, and he's like, yeah, I used to Hakuna Matata. He's like, no problems. I said, well, if there's no problems, why are you here? And he was like, look, we had 15 kids. We had 15 kids in our family and one garden. And I was the youngest. So there's no way that I'm going to go be able to get this garden and make money. So I got an offer as a refugee to go to Kenya. And you go to Kenya and they teach you English. And so he left his mom and 15 siblings by himself and went to Kenya. And when he was in Kenya, they taught them English, but he was also super fast. He was a really good athlete. And like, there's a program where you can go to the United States and to New York and you get sponsored. And he goes, only 10 kids got chosen out of all these kids that were in this program. And people who are working in the program kept coming to go, I'll give you $10,000 if you'll say no and don't go, because then one of their kids or a friend gets the spot. And so all of these adults to him as a kid were saying, I'll give you $10,000 if you give up your spot. And he said, I had to stop and think, if you're going to give me $10,000 to give up my spot, there must be a lot more $10,000 where I'm going. That's, as a founder, how you need to think. If somebody's going to give you a bunch of money to do one thing, but if you did the others, the right path, you're going to make a lot more because you're going to please a lot more people and have a lot more opportunity. Don't take the big money that's just once, right? Just don't take the big money that's just once.
That is so good. I love that. I love this framework that's being built here. But I think, one of the roles as kind of an external advisor, as a VC, is you help people pull them out of whatever path they're stuck on. So all these things, kind of, you're plotting a course towards, like, how do you recognize that there's actually something wrong when you look at a founder, when you look at a company? Like, what are the signals, even for us, to recognize, like, oh man, there's something to be fixed here?
I think the biggest things, it's usually two things. One is they're scared of something they don't understand. And so I'm like, okay, let's start looking at it from, I probably have some perspective here. So let me help you look at it, because you're not good at everything and that's okay. None of us are, right? Yeah. But when you start surrounding yourselves with people who can help fill in the gaps where you don't have skills or background, that's what makes great leaders. That's what makes great companies. When you look at what's the next gap or, person I need to put in here to make us a successful company, it's the same thing as a leader. And we tell people this all the time, go get external coaches and mentors and friends and advisors who have different experiences than you to help fill in where you don't have. And so I'll see our CEOs ask, okay, my sales leader said this and I don't know if it's true. Right? I'll get that. And then I look at the bookings plan and I'm like, you're right, it's not true. So here's our problem. And you start to just dig a little deeper and help them see. But part of this is also teaching, right? You're not only saying, let me help you solve the problem you have right now, but you're teaching to fish a little bit, right? I'm not just going to fish for you, but let me show you what this looks like. We were doing this yesterday. We totally overwhelmed this poor team. We had a sales leader and a marketing leader, and we were teaching them about operational rhythm and decks and KPIs and what they should be thinking about to help put some structure to the business, because everybody's running 20 different directions. And so we showed them, it's like, this is what an annual operating plan is. Here's what quota is. Here's what a board plan is, right? And we're walking through that. Here's definitions of what should be in those. And here's how you should think about the separation between them.
Oh my God, we need to do a workshop and record you doing this.
And here's some templates. So this is what we do. So here's some templates of how you might think about them. And here's some of the KPIs. And you could see their eyes getting bigger, bigger, bigger. And I was like, don't worry, you shouldn't be, we're going to have a person who's going to run finance. They don't have one yet, right? Who's going to help you with this. But for now, they're the sales and marketing, you're going to focus on the go-to-market plan, because the go-to-market plan drives the entire annual operating plan, and everything else falls from what are we going to do in revenue. But we need to make sure we have all those pipes built. Like, how are we truly measuring whether we're successful? Where is revenue coming from? What's converting at what? Not just like we're going to throw some numbers out there. So it's amazing when you start to put these foundations together for people to start to say, okay, let us help you with what you don't know. And then let's talk about who you hire, who starts to bring that knowledge as you get big enough. But otherwise, rely on people you have this huge ecosystem around you. And we get so siloed in trying to drive a business, we forget to stop and ask for help from that ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that's where I think, as the best founders I've seen are ones who have focus. They can say no to things. They can narrow their list of things and not chase every shiny object and not blow up over every one thing that they see that's wrong. And they also surround themselves with people and a network that they stop and actually go talk to make sure, is like, is this sound right to you? What should I be looking for? Can you help me talk to somebody who knows this, right? Because that's part of our ongoing, education as we all grow and learn as leaders. So
That's amazing. So focus in a support system, and then
and ask for help.
ask for help. And then how do you action that? Like, sometimes the application of the knowledge is not as simple black and white either, right?
Never is.
Yeah. And the devil's in the details. Any advice for me as a founder CEO?
Yeah, I think it's one thing. I think it's first of all, it's like, you don't want to bite off more than you can chew at the stage you're at, right? So what's a stage appropriate for where you're at? So just kind of taking things a step at a time. But it's like thinking about a product roadmap, right? We know we want to get here, and from A to here, let's call it D, A to D, we know what we have to build. What are the foundations we have to build to get there? Everything in your business is exactly the same. As long as you know, like, I need to get to here. So figure out what here is, whether that's in finance maturity, whether that's in, leadership structure maturity. Here's where I know I need to get. What makes sense and is what we're doing on the path. If we're doing something that's over here, it's like, 3, and we're going from A to D. You're like, why are we doing 3?
Yeah.
Is 3 productive to getting to D?
Yeah.
And if it's not, you have to be honest with yourselves. I tell people, it's like, it's okay to do a side thing. Like, we're going to go off and do this thing. And we talk about this a lot with product. Like, okay, this customer asked for this crazy thing we're not going to do for anybody else. First of all, why would we do it? We should try to say no. But if we decide to do it, we have to be honest with ourselves. We are only going to give it this much time. And then we are going back to getting back to from A to D. And you can only afford so many of those. You can't do it much. But the same thing with hiring leadership. The same thing with putting in those foundations for your core. Do something that gets you from A to A.5, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like just building a little bit on, but does it make sense as you look at where you ultimately want to get to, that it's foundational?
That's awesome.
It's the next step in that direction. And you had asked also about getting rid of people.
Yeah.
Tenure. It's like sitting here going, well, what is she going to say to this? When you are growing fast, I'm going to be super honest, and I say this even for myself. I say it for a lot of CEOs. I've transitioned CEOs. We transitioned the CEO on one of the companies I'm on the board of this year. It is, when the skill set that you are treading water to keep up because the company's grown so fast, right? And when you see your team doing that, the thing I see with CEOs and all of us, I will say this about myself, everybody, the best piece of advice I got was hire slow, fire fast. None of us do it as fast as we should, right? We hire too fast and we fire too slow.
Yep.
And the thing that happens with people is the company outgrows our competency level. We all have a skill set that's at a certain place. And some people will scale amazingly. There are some people who will scale, but it is rare. And so for each of us, as the company is getting to a point where it's getting way outside the bounds of anything you have experiences with, and the person you have is guessing, they don't know the answer. They're guessing, they're trying their best. They're smart. You like them. They're a good person. When they're guessing, they're drowning. and it is not good for you. That's when you need to transition to that next level, and it's typically 3 years is usually about a max time frame when you're growing really fast. You sometimes hit it faster than that. The thing that
Like 3 months.
no, it does. It does. And you got to be honest with yourself. And this is even like, I mean,
Yeah.
my own executive team, our your executive teams you've all had, we saw people hit walls. Sometimes people like be great one quarter, the next one, like, holy cow, they hit the wall. And so you've just got to watch for it and know it, because the best thing every single time that I've let somebody go, they were like, thank you. I just had somebody I was talking to the other day who I let go in a prior job, and he's like, Anna, I was probably a year past when for myself I should have gone. And for me, he was probably 6 months past what I saw that he was, but that I should have, I should have transitioned him out. But it was, he's like, it was the best thing. Like, I went to some place where my skill sets are super valuable. So they feel good. The company they're at needs that skill set. And you're not pushing them past, and the company is not getting what they need to really help scale to the next level.
That's really good advice. I want to go back to, you mentioned the side endeavors, or saying yes to something that you probably shouldn't, or super custom. I don't know a single founder that is not dealing with that pretty much. From your experience at Outreach or somewhere else, right? Like, one, were there any of those where you would have done it again? And two, were there any that you're like, oh, that was a huge mistake, or any color that you are able to share?
Yeah. You know what's funny? I'm just thinking for a second. I can't think of one where I said we should have done it again.
Oh no, I was hoping you didn't say that.
I'm sorry. Not any big ones. Maybe there was a small one, but
Yeah,
not any
yeah,
big
yeah.
ones. When there's smoke, there's fire. If it's feeling hard, it's feeling off, it's gonna keep being off. And what people think is gonna happen. I was telling somebody this the other day. We had this arrangement that came before my time at one of my prior companies with this humongous company, like, Fortune 100,
Yeah.
bigger than that, but definitely in the 100. And they're like, oh my gosh, no, if we just do this one deal, it's going to be great, because then we're just going to do this with them, and then they're going to grow, and then they won't bother us anymore. We're just going to get this over. We had a meeting with them every single week for the entire time I was at this company for 5 years. We met with this company. They had a whole committee that they had dedicated, because they have way more resources than you ever will. When you look at enterprise companies, they have time. They've got a lot of time on their hands. They got a lot of people. And as a startup, they can exhaust all of yours every day,
Yeah.
and not move the needle for you. And then you're behind, right? And then you haven't focused on all those other customers. And so I think the thing that is the problem is you always think it's just going to be, if I just do this one thing for them. The book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, it's as if you give a mouse a cookie. Sales, giving things to customers is that. You're going to need to expect them to ask for something else. The minute
I
you
think
give
I
them
rate
that,
my daughter if you give a dog an apple or something.
if you give a mouse a cookie, it's also a book for your kids. So it's the same concept. Literally, those kids' books still apply when you're a CEO. Sorry.
Yeah.
But it is there. You always think, I'm just going to do this one thing, and then it's going to be easy. And it's never going to be easy when you've custom done something for somebody
Oh my God.
that is causing a big pain that only they have.
Yeah.
Because that pain is not going to just go,
Makes a lot
it
of
doesn't
sense.
go away,
Yeah.
right? And so like, oh wait, can you just do this one more thing for me? And then over this one more thing, and oh wait, that isn't working. So now we want you to do this. And we had people spinning us left, right, and center on some things that we thought were going to be these huge opportunities that never materialized to anything, or they materialized to something and then dragged us on for years and years trying to get out of this place we put ourselves. Hindsight's 2020. I mean, that's the easy part of me sitting here right now. I know what the aftermath was, but I wish I could sit here and go, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we did X.
Yeah, there's one that actually panned out the way we thought it would. Like that makes sense. Personally, right, what I've struggled with in trying to think through is like the mode of operation that I'm in as a CEO and founder, building for VCs on one extreme, right? Because you need the next round potentially if you're fundraising, right? There is building for profitability. We were cash flow positive last month, and we're like, okay. But also it's like, okay, should we be like, right? And then there's building for conviction of what you're building towards and not caring about the market or anything else. There's like so many modes of operation in my mind, right? Like, and I think one thing I personally struggle with is trying to figure out like which one should I default to mostly or be biased towards in the different phases, right? Because I can see like, hey, sure, like I can optimize for these three different metrics because then I know I can raise a big round or whatever, right? Like then there's the like, hey, I can also optimize for these other three things right now and prioritize in a certain way and will be highly profitable because we know how to turn a profit because we bootstrap at first, right? Or I can go in and just go all out as aggressive as humanly possible to seize the opportunity and, you know, build for the future and the thing we're building towards, you know, like, and saying no to anything that even remotely like deviates from that. And, you know, like firing all the customers that ask for customer things. You know, like there's all these extremes in my head and I'm just weird like that, you know, and I'm constantly like having these voices in my head. I was like, no, but what about this? And, you know, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
If you take
How
the
you know what you're
time,
optimized for, I guess, is what I'm getting at, you know?
part of this, you were talking about this a little bit earlier, and because where you guys live, you're looking at what is the company, who are they, right? Well, who they say they are to the market, and what is the pain that they solve? Because of what you do, you're figuring that out early. Not every company has that. They haven't really, and sometimes the market changes, right? And you're trying to reinvent who you are. And one of the things I see is a lot of people trying to be everything to everybody to try to get revenue, right? Because they're
Yeah.
trying to raise and they're trying to have enough money to say that they're growing at a certain whatever X percentage. Everybody puts out these, you should be at X% growth, right? You don't have this problem, but some people do. But for you, for all companies, the thing I would say is if you got to take the time to sit down with you and your founders and your team to create the vision, like who are we and what pain do we solve and what are we best at? Like what are we best at? And if what you're best at isn't solving the pain, then that's not the right thing. Just to be clear, because there's a lot of times there's something you're really good at and it's just not going to sell enough. It's not going to be the thing that people are going to want to buy. And you have to make sure you disconnect those things. If you go all out on your vision and you don't validate with the marketplace that what you're doing in your vision is the pain that they want to pay for, and there's a difference. Also, the one thing I tell people, there's a difference between intellectual buy-in, like intellectually they think that's a cool
Oh, that's
idea,
cool. Yeah.
and budget buy-in that they will pay for that solution. Those are two different things. You can get people who think what your idea is cool, but won't pay for it. And you think that they will because they're like all positive. You've got to differentiate of that urgency. When I was talking about in sales, like what is this? What is the urgency to buy our product? That has to be when you're building product. Is there an urgency that companies have that they would buy this if you put this in front of them tomorrow? Because they have that pain versus they're like, yeah, that's a really cool idea. Maybe next quarter, maybe next year I'll buy that.
Yeah.
So don't fool yourself, especially when you have friends and family do beta testing. Sometimes you get the intellectual buy-in versus the budget buy-in. But I think if you are taking the step back and saying, who are we and what pain do we solve? And you're always validating that with your customers and your market. If you stay on that track and that's what you build for, revenue will always come. And then the funding comes and then all the things come. And maybe it takes a little bit longer because you're being true to a specific vision. You have to obviously want to build a healthy business and you want to be able to be successful. So you're always balancing like, are we growing enough with the products we're offering now and what we're building for the future, you know, Horizon 1, Horizon 2, all of that, right? But if we are staying true to what we think is the workflow that is most impactful for our customers and the pain that we solve, if we're building for that, then everything else will come. I always say, like, everybody's like, oh, but, you know, funding and
Yeah.
what our board wants and those things. We disappointed our board, not from a growth perspective, but on decisions we made all the time because what they pushed us on sometimes wasn't right. We knew it. We lived the business every day, so we had to make those decisions. And I will tell you, you know, you are the operators. You are living this. You go validate with other operators, but there are times where our board's like, you should only do X. And we're like, we can't do that. We've got to do Y. And we grew a great business out of that. But it's that focus, it's that maniacal focus on what is the difference that you make in the market that you serve and the pain that you're solving. And if you are continuing to build for that, everything else will come. Always.
I love that advice. I feel like we're getting a crazy good masterclass here. So I appreciate that. And like, how do you balance that? And what now it feels like every week an entire category is being disrupted, an entire, you know, everything is changing, you know, and it kind of feels like everything is in like fast forward mode. And it's like it's really hard to figure out when is it okay to balance and build foundation versus just like move crazy fast. Like all rules are out. All the businesses are like, they will never be disrupted ever. All of a sudden they're like, oh,
What just happened? Yeah. No, this is an unprecedented time.
yeah,
And we all, and I,
yeah.
it is hard to give advice on unprecedented time because there's no history on this unprecedented time.
Like,
It was what we were talking about earlier. There's so many people in their roles who've never seen this before. Well, no one's ever seen this before. So period. Everybody is the same on the same playing field. None of us have ever seen this before. But I think as you take a step back and you are saying, again, the piece that's different in this from what I said a minute ago, you're solving a customer pain. What technology are you using to solve that customer pain, and how are you keeping on top of the technologies available? I used to say this all the time, and it's so much more true today. I said, we go compete with Salesforce, whoever. It's like they can't build what we built because their technology is too old. They built on this old foundation. It's too expensive to rip it apart. So they're going to market us to death versus actually use R&D to create a difference in this market.
yeah,
We build it with the R&D on this platform today, and it is the most intelligent platform you could buy. Today, that statement lasts, 3 weeks, 6 days. I don't even know. It's like used to last longer. But I think the challenge for founders today is not putting blinders on and just cranking and building with what we know, but looking and saying what pieces of technology are coming in that help you accelerate. And that's the hardest part, I think, is because you have to focus and keep an eye here always on what's happening in the evolution of what's available to you to build so that you can incorporate that in to help accelerate your business, or somebody else will and they'll accelerate past you. And everybody uses the word, what is durability, a durable business now, because we saw these ones go, oh, 0 to whatever, great number. And then somebody else came behind them and then totally took them out, right?
yeah,
I can't give advice for how you do that other than you've got to watch both. You have to have two, it's like being an octopus now. You got to have legs into everything,
yeah.
but really into that customer pain and the technology advancements that are coming in play that you could utilize, and try to utilize them as fast as you can. We have these, engineering is such a core, prompt engineering, go to market engineering. Everybody's an engineer now. It's like you're not going to have anybody as any other title. But it is how are you bringing people into your business to help you do that? Because it's probably one of the most critical things, right? Is keeping that eye really tight on what's happening in that piece of the market. Because otherwise you're going to be reactionary all the time to what's being built versus what was the technology that came out that could help you build, that you could be saying, could we use it? Does it make sense for us? How do we pull that in? And you used to build foundations that were too hard to change. With AI, you can change it, right? Which is the beauty of it. So I think it is how are you allocating the resources, because you can't do everything, to really watch that so that you are really staying on top of the technologies that are coming out and being able to, because that's the difference. That's the thing that's disrupting. It's one thing being built on top of another, right?
I think this is one of my favorite podcasts we've done so far because we've set the record for how long we've talked before saying the word AI. I've been counting.
Whoa, that is so true. Oh my
Wow.
God. That is incredible. Like,
Wow.
good job. Like,
Well, the foundations are still true. Like
you just broke the whole thing. And you're
you
like,
did. That was awesome, Jason. Wow. The foundations of building and customer pain are still true, right? That hasn't changed ever. And people, the thing I see founders do the most is they lose focus. That is the biggest thing. They got excited about what they wanted to build versus what did the market want? And did the market change? And what is the pain your customers have now? And we get in our silos. I still remember talking to a C-level executive over sales, which is pretty crazy, of a company that was like 35 million in ARR. And I was like, well, talk to me about kind of what you're hearing from customers. Go, oh, I don't visit customers anymore. I have a team that does that. I'm like, what? I can't, there is not a role, a C-level role, a leader in any function in a company that should be meeting with customers ever.
yeah.
At least listening to the calls. Like, and that's only if you're like, I don't know, like some, I don't even know. I can't even think of one. I honestly,
CEO like of every major company that does that. And
you cannot lose touch with your customer. You just can't.
one thing that it was, I feel like for us, it's a little bit of cheating in a good way, is one, like Jason and a bunch of other people in the company, myself as well, like we're building for ourselves in a lot of ways. So it's like building for my pain
You're putting
that
yourself
I
in.
had custom built a lot of things for like 15 years, kind of, or had to stitch together a lot of, agency plus people plus this plus that plus tools. So there's that one piece. Then the second piece was like, I started by doing workshops and teaching people how to build GrowthX before I built GrowthX. Like essentially like, hey,
Yeah,
if you want to build this thing, here's how I do it. This is how I custom built this whole effing thing.
right.
And then that process was like very clear, the areas where people were like, oh yes, I want to just do that. I don't need your help. And it turned out like a lot of that was, people needed more than just a recipe essentially. But then in that process, I think we've genuinely, because I just really enjoy like building community and meeting people. It's like we just nurture this. I've never experienced this before where like, sure, we're going to invest in a lot of channels and things like that, but we haven't had to do marketing. Like, it was like, we don't have a lot of organic traffic on our site and we help our companies grow organically, right? Like, so it's kind of like, we're going to change that. But
Then to drink your own champagne.
but yeah, exactly. But it's like, we're, not demand constrained. And some of our competitors have like 20, 30, 40 AEs and less revenue than we do. We have one AE that started a few months ago and already made quota for the year, right? Like, and so I think like for us, like that's the thing that I wish every founder would do is just like build for the pain that you've experienced or have deep empathy and intellectual curiosity for, right? Like, two, don't build first. Figure out what is the information or what is the thing that they would pay almost like as a service if needed, right? That you could help them do that. And in the process of helping do that, it's going to be so obvious where technology can enable that better.
It's that budget commitment, not intellectual curiosity, right? That we were talking about.
So it's like, hey, if someone's willing to pay you $100,000 for how to solve that problem, they will for sure give you $100,000 for how to solve that problem, and you actually solving that problem.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. No, it's a great way to say it. And I think, and to the point you made earlier, this market moves fast, things change quickly. So it's always that continuous validation, right?
Yeah.
Because you can build something and building things is not easy. And there's a commitment and resources and a path that you lay, and then that path could change. And you want to know that as fast as possible so that you can pivot as a business.
To wrap up, maybe one fun one is like, what is one of your convictions that most people would disagree with you?
Over these last couple of years, especially, people have gotten so conservative, like you're like, okay, I got to be profitable and I've got to, and the only way that you grow is taking risks. And people have some people, not all, but people have forgotten how to take risk, forgotten to put themselves out of their comfort zone. And you only grow and only are successful if you put yourself out of your comfort zone and try new things. And I think my whole career, which is obviously a unique one with the titles and the things that I've done, everybody's like, well, how'd you do that? And it's like, I took a risk. I took on something that was broken. I tried to go fix it. I tried to go do something new, something different. And risk taking, both in your career but as a company, are the things that make you grow. And some of those risks will fail and some of them will be successful. Calculated risks obviously are important, but I think a lot of people have forgotten how to take risks and put themselves out there as a company. And if you don't do that, why do this, right?
Yeah,
If you're not going to go test the boundaries of what's possible.
Be an accountant.
Go be an accountant. There you go.
I love that. What a
Mic drop. There you go. Go be an accountant.
amazing way to wrap up. I just want to say thank you, and it's truly an honor to get to spend all this time and like
This is so
the
fun.
amount of like information that I've learned in this short period of time. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to spend a whole day. Can we pull up a whiteboard and learn? Like,
You know where I am. So
yes,
we can pull up a
I
whiteboard.
appreciate you so much. So thank you for the.
Thank you.
It's been
Thank
a
you both.
pleasure.
This was awesome. No, thank you. Really great discussion.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of AI-Led Growth Podcast. Like, subscribe, all of the above, whatever works for you. If you're on YouTube or whatever your platform is, we would love to hear from you. Leave a comment. What are some of the topics you want to hear from? And then a few more things. We have our AIledgrowth.com community. Check it out. This is where we're putting all these resources. We have playbooks, templates, tools, masterclasses, courses, all of the above. Check it out. And you can also subscribe there to our newsletter which is sent weekly with a bunch of resources to help you as well. Thanks.